You're listening to the micro version of the Savage Lovecast. www.savagelovecast.com.
If you're stuck in a relationship quandary, or if you're looking for sexual harmony, well, there's nothing you can't ask on the Savage Lovecast.
The Coney Beach Pleasure Park in Porthcawl, Wales looks like a nice place to visit if you're a fan of grim seaside amusement parks. And really, no one does grim seaside amusement parks like the Brits do. Or you could visit the Porthcawl Museum if you enjoy small-town museums with military artifacts, or maybe you'd prefer to visit the ruins of nearby Ogmore Castle, which are almost 1,000 years old. But if you want to have sex in Porthcawl, you're going to need to get a room. And the restrooms in Porthcawl's Griffin Park don't count. You are not allowed to have sex in there, which hasn't stopped some people, which is why the town is planning to install new public conveniences at great public expense, toilets that sound like they were designed by the same team that makes cars and fountain pens for James Bond. According to CNN, congrats Porthcawl, you made the international news. According to CNN, Porthcawl's new public toilets will have motion and weight sensors, and if more than one person enters, or if the toilet is occupied for too long, or if the state-of-the-art motion sensors in the toilet detect violent activity, shit goes down. Basically, if Porthcawl's non-portable potties are a-rockin', the consequences come a-knockin'. Occupants will be sprayed with cold water, alarms will sound, and the doors will fly open. All these high-tech toilets, according to a Porthcawl official, will ensure that Porthcawl remains a great place to live, work, and visit. But not a great place to have a quick shag in a public restroom, and not a great place to be a disabled person, as many have pointed out on social media. You know, someone who might enter the toilet on a heavy wheelchair and rock it around a little bit, or have to take a little bit longer. Now, personally, I have never understood the appeal of getting it on in a public toilet. Some people do it because it's the only place they've got. What they're doing and who they're doing are the turn on, not where they're doing it. But some people really enjoy what the Brits call cottaging, messing around in cruisy public toilets in the middle of the night. Mostly men people who like to mess around with other men people. And they're mostly straight identified men people. And you don't have to take my word for that. Just check out the scandalized news reports after a bust in a public sex environment. The police are always shocked by the numbers of married to women men they arrested, along with the numbers of priests, and I always love this detail, upstanding members of the community, who weren't standing up when they got caught, most likely. It was hard to read about Porthcawl's new toilets without banging my head on poor Ann Lander's desk. Conservatives in the UK have imposed a decade-long austerity program. According to a report from the UN, cuts to public services in the UK since 2010 have resulted in, quote, tragic social consequences. More children and old people now live in abject poverty, and it's only getting worse. But there's plenty of money for high-tech toilets. We can have children living in poverty, but we can't have men giving each other blowjobs in the middle of the night in an otherwise deserted public restroom. And excuse me, but don't the good people of Wales, who voted against leaving the EU, have more important things to worry about just now than blowjobs? Like crashing out of the EU at the end of October? A leaked government report says there will be severe food and medicine shortages in the UK if it crashes out of the EU, the hard Brexit, which is right now the plan. And it's blowjobs that are keeping people up at night? Now, in fairness to the good people of Porthcawl, a lot of the people who've objected to these new toilets are Porthcallers. Porthcallese, Porthcallinians, I don't know. And the haunting fear that someone somewhere might be getting a blowjob someplace somewhere they shouldn't prompts a lot of people to act like idiots all over the world. The police in Washington, D.C. just spent buttloads of public money conducting a sting operation last week that targeted a cruisy public park. From the reports, the police engaged in what sounds like pre-Stonewall style entrapment, with undercover cops propositioning gay men in the park for consensual sex elsewhere and then arresting them if they agreed. And in Florida recently, the police arrested 13 men for having sex in closed rooms in a dirty bookstore video arcade on the grounds that these men were, quote, publicly exposing their genitals. In a video arcade, you had to buy a ticket to enter, with a door that you closed behind you. I don't think it's any coincidence that we're seeing an uptick in this sort of shit. The world is spinning out of control. People feel powerless to do something about Donald Trump and guns or Boris Johnson and Brexit. But free-range blowjobs? We're going to do something about those. We're going to stamp those out while children starve and the world burns. Because we can. Not because we should. All right, coming up on today's show, on the micro edition of the Savage Lovecast, Christian Picciolini joins us to tackle a very important question. A caller with a sibling who's drifting into white supremacism and violent white extremism. Christian is a former skinhead turned anti-hate group activist. That's our extended interview on this show. Usually that would be on the Magnum edition of the podcast, but we think everybody who listens to the Magnum needs to hear this interview, so we're putting it on the micro-free edition of the Savage Lovecast. And on the Magnum edition of today's Savage Lovecast, Zachary Zane joins us to discuss coming out as a bisexual man. All that, plus tons of your questions on today's show. This episode of the Savage Lovecast is brought to you by Talkspace, online therapy that makes it easy to get extra support. Use the offer code SAVAGE for $65 off your first month. Go to Talkspace.com and use the offer code SAVAGE. Thanks to Roman for supporting the Savage Lovecast. Roman is a men's health company that offers remote online diagnosis for ED and convenient monthly delivery of medication. For a free online visit and free 2-day shipping, go to getroman.com/savage. This episode of the Savage Lovecast is brought to you by DoorDash. Get $5 off your first order when you download the DoorDash app from the App Store and enter the promo code SAVAGE.
Hey, Dan. I'm a 20-year-old straight guy living in the Midwest, and I've recently come to the realization that on some level I may be gender fluid. I'm comfortable living as a man in most of my life, but on a level that's not just sexual, that I thought was just sexual for a long time. There are times when I want to be a woman and dress like a woman and act like a woman. And my question is, how is this something I pursue? Are there communities for this? Is there some specific distinction of what this desire is of mostly straight men who have the desire to be feminine or be women at some times? I thought I was trans for a long time. I'm perfectly comfortable being a man. And I've reached the point where I feel like I need a way to identify myself and a community to express this part of me in.
Dude, that's how you identify? I'm affirming your gender identity. Dude, you're a cross-dresser. Cross-dressing is a thing, and maybe it's a term that's been around for such a long time, and if there's anything the queer movement likes to do, it's generate brand new terms for age-old things. But you're a cross-dresser. You're a straight guy who enjoys dressing up as a woman, acting as a woman, being treated as a woman at certain times for limited amount of times. And there are lots of cross-dressers out there in the world. If you get on Google, if you get on Twitter, you will find other guys like you, guys who are comfortable with their assigned male at birth identities, guys who identify as men, but guys who enjoy for the stress release of it or the eroticism of it or both. And there's nothing illegitimate about cross-dressing for erotic reasons, but not everybody who cross-dresses for erotic reasons only cross-dresses for erotic reasons. A lot of guys find it fun, relaxing, interesting, a release of tension, an escape from the performance of masculinity. We talk a lot about the performance of femininity in our cultural discourse, but masculinity is also a performance, and it's a stressful one. And I think it's particularly stressful for straight guys. So cross-dressing can be an avenue of release. There's an annual week-long Fantasia Fair in Provincetown. For many years, for decades, it was expressly by and for cross-dressers. Now it has grown to encompass transgender people, gender-fluid people, but all sorts of different kinds of gender expression. You might want to get your butt to Fantasia Fair in Provincetown, save your pennies, and go. But wherever you are in the country, I guarantee you there's a local group of cross-dressing guys who are getting together, who are having social events. And, you know, at the social events, it's not about the sex, not about the eroticism, in the same way that leather guys get together at social events and not fucking at that event necessarily, maybe later, because leather for some people is eroticized at times and other times not necessarily eroticized. But still, you know, something these guys feel they have to do, just as you feel you have to do this, and not just for sexy time reasons. So congrats You've worked through this. You've worked it out. You've determined that you're not transgender. I'm not saying, congrats, you're not transgender. I'm saying you have come to some understanding of who you are and how this aspect of your gender expression fits into your life and fits into your identity as a man. You are not the first one. You are not alone. There's a big community out there of straight male crossdressers like you, many of them partnered. And if you get your butt to Provincetown for Fantasia Fair, go to fanfair.info on the worldwide interwebs for more information. You will see lots of guys like you, most of them there with their female partners.
Hi, Dan. This is a cisgendered female from the Midwest, and I have a call about my sister who has been sharing with me for the past year that she feels abused by her partner. She'll have long conversations with me where she details experiences of abuse, and these are obviously very disturbing and upsetting to me. And then the next day, in I think a pretty typical pattern, she says, "No, he's awesome. He's amazing. I love him. Why don't you support me?" After I've, asked her to make an exit strategy and, asked her to seek counseling. And so this is very troubling for me, and the back and forth, the push and pull, it's really affecting me a lot emotionally. And I'm wondering what you think I can do to both support my sister and continue to support her and listen to her in the way that she needs and protect my own emotions, because the last time this happened, I was so upset the next day. Like, I couldn't work. I didn't know what to do. Yeah, I would really love to have your advice.
You have my permission not to talk with your sister about this anymore. When she starts in on her partner being abusive and wants to walk you through the abuse, just say to her, "I'm very sorry this is going on. You know already what I think you need to do. You need to get out of this relationship. When you want to talk about getting out of this relationship in a real and practical and actionable way, I will be there for you. But I can't listen to these stories and then get the call from you the next day where you tell me not only that you're staying, but that you love him, that he's lovable, he's not all the terrible things that you told me he was last night." In a sense, she's gaslighting you about her relationship, and she doesn't have a right to put you through that. You can express your sympathy. You can tell her you support her. You can tell her you'll be there for her when she's ready to go. You can't be her pressure release valve because it's too stressful for you. It's not a role you can play, and it's not a role you are obligated to play. Long day at work? Tough day at school, still stuck at the office. Treat yourself to the meal you deserve and the food you want. Have your favorite restaurants come to you with DoorDash. DoorDash connects you to your favorite restaurants in your city. Ordering is easy. Open the DoorDash app, choose what you want to eat, and your food will be delivered to you wherever you are. Not only is your favorite pizza joint already on DoorDash, but there are over 340,000 restaurants in 3,300 cities, so you might find a new favorite too. With door-to-door delivery in all 50 states and Canada, order from your local go-tos or choose from your favorite national restaurants. Don't worry about dinner. Let dinner come to you with DoorDash. Right now, our listeners can get $5 off their first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app and enter the promo code SAVAGE. That's $5 off your first order when you download the DoorDash app from the App Store and enter the promo code SAVAGE. It's a great way to get something delicious to eat. It's also a great way to show your support for the show. So don't forget, that's promo code SAVAGE for $5 off your first order from DoorDash.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to know, is it normal for every couple to want to explore or even talk about polyamory or open relationships? I mean, I'm a total monogamist, but then, I'm 76. But just wondered, I think it's great if you can do it, but I'm kind of a jealous Sicilian, so I don't know.
If you've been listening to the show a lot, your sample is skewed, just as my sample is skewed. People who are interested in exploring non-monogamy or polyamory, they're going to call with questions about non-monogamy or polyamory. Happily monogamous couples who are feeling no conflict and are generating no conflict in their relationship by raising the subject of non-monogamy or polyamory, they're not going to call. So non-monogamy and polyamory is not indeed normal for every couple. Non-monogamous, or people who wish to become non-monogamous, or people who are curious about polyamory, are going to be overrepresented on this program, on really all sex advice, relationship advice programs, all sex and relationship advice columns. The people who are thinking about doing something big and scary and perhaps risky and dangerous and non-normative are the ones who are going to have the kind of stress or the kind of questions that would drive them to pick up the phone and give me a call or send me or E. Jean Carroll or somebody else a letter. Monogamy is indeed what most people tell researchers that they want. A lot of people think it's what they want and they make monogamous commitments and then realize after they've made that monogamous commitment that monogamy is not what they want. And then they have to do the hard work of reverse engineering their relationship to allow for some degree of openness. And again, that can generate a lot of conflict, and conflict equals calls. All that said, while I do think monogamy is what a lot of people want, it is normal for people who want monogamy, for people who've made monogamous commitments, for people who've had or are in monogamous relationships to experience desire for other people. You, caller, you say you are 76 years old. You say you've been always monogamous all your life. Still, even though you were monogamous and still are presumably monogamous, there had to be times where a waiter or somebody at the gym, or somebody on the bus, or somebody walking down the street, or somebody you saw in a play caught your eye, and you thought, well, if I weren't in this relationship, if I hadn't made a monogamous commitment, if monogamy weren't so important to me, that might be someone I would be interested in. That's somebody I might be interested in dating or fucking the shit out of if I weren't in a committed relationship, but I am, so that's not a thought that I'm going to spend much time entertaining. As such, you were well suited for monogamy and monogamous commitments, and congrats and Yahtzee to you. But the thing that's happening these days, and that you may have noticed, is more people are realizing that monogamy needs to be an opt-in. It needs to be a conscious choice that they've made for themselves and for and with their partners, and not just what they were assigned. More people are scrutinizing their assignments, the script that was written for them by family, by religion, by culture, and asking themselves, what will make me happy? What do I want out of and in a relationship? And that can change over time. One of the paradoxes of non-monogamous relationships and most non-monogamous people is that they were initially in a monogamous relationship. Most non-monogamous relationships were monogamous at the outset and then were successfully reverse engineered into open or poly relationships. But this is the future sex positive liberals like me want, a future where people get to make their own choices. And that is a better, safer world for people who want monogamy. Because if people are empowered to choose monogamy or non-monogamy before they make a commitment to someone, you're less likely to wind up with monogamous people or people who are good at monogamy, want monogamy, even if they are still attracted to other people at sometimes, in committed monogamous relationships with people who are not as good at it, not capable of it, people that will not be made happy by being in a long-term monogamous commitment. Those are disastrous situations when you have somebody who's good at monogamy and wants monogamy partnered with somebody who only thought they wanted monogamy and aren't any good at it and were hustled into making a monogamous commitment because they were told that is what good people want. And that is all good people do. And we all want to think of ourselves as good people. So sometimes we do shit and make choices to be good that aren't actually good for us. Hence this ongoing conversation over the last couple of decades, really, about options, about monogamy. And I think it's a conversation that made the leap from the gay community to the straight community in a very real way, because monogamy isn't unheard of in gay land, but it was always an active choice, never a default setting. And I think that's where we're headed, that monogamy still a valid choice, maybe even the choice that most people are going to want to make. But in the future, because of this conversation, it's going to be an active choice made by both halves of the couple, and therefore likelier to be a successful choice. If you're in a rough patch or you're just facing life's daily ups and downs, you need someone who'll listen. According to the National Alliance on Mental Health Illness, LGBTQ folks are 3 times more likely to experience mental health challenges due to discrimination and social rejection. Thankfully for all, Talkspace provides a support system trained to help members of the LGBT community handle their most challenging emotions around issues of gender, sexual identity, and orientation. Everyone deserves to be heard. That's why Talkspace provides therapy for how we live today. It's an affordable, convenient, and private safe space you can access wherever you are. Talkspace uses your preferences to match you with one of more than 5,000 therapists the same day you sign up. Talkspace is committed to helping LGBTQ folks experience acceptance and find the support they need. That's why they provide a safe space for you to be open and honest about what you're going through. And Talkspace really couldn't be simpler. You can send unlimited messages and hear back from your therapist daily, 5 days a week. All you need is a computer with an internet connection or the Talkspace mobile app. Your conversation is completely confidential and can be done from the privacy of your device. And if you want to switch therapists, you can do so at any time at no extra cost. Talkspace has more than 5,000 licensed therapists who are experienced in working with LGBTQ clients. To match with a therapist for a fraction of the price of traditional therapy, go to Talkspace.com/savage. Make sure to use the code SAVAGE to get $65 off your first month. That's $65 off your first month when you sign up today at Talkspace.com/savage.
Hello, Dan. I am a gay man living in New York City. I'm having a problem. I've met this guy, and I've known him for a little bit over a month. In the beginning, it was amazing. We connected so wonderfully, but a series of personal setbacks fell on him, unfortunately, and he's become a completely different person. He has issues with family and drinking and that sort of thing. And I feel like I want to be there for him, but I don't know how to reach him. He seems to vanish. We were so close, and now it seems so far away. I think it's temporary, but I don't know what to do. He's 26, and he's already a divorcee. I'm 28, and he's like the first guy I've ever connected with. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I'm wasting time with this guy because he's so troubled and because the situation is downtrodden, or maybe whether I should wait and, see if things improve and that he will want to spend time with me again.
You are not having a problem. You have dodged a bullet. This guy that you've only known for a month, and I get it. You make that connection, and if it's your first connection, whether you're 14 or whether you're 28, you feel it very intensely, and you invest a lot of hope, and you imagine a future with this person that you've made this connection with, particularly your, first love or first feeling or inkling of love or first super duper crush that's reciprocated in some way, and you get very invested in it. And then 4 weeks in, when the guy disappears on you or reveals that they have a drug or alcohol problem, you're disappointed, you're crushed. You wish you could fix that guy so he could be the guy that you hoped he was, that you imagined he might be. But he ain't that guy. And he's not going to be that guy. And you can't fix him. And you can't rescue him. Particularly, you only known him for a month. I promise you can't repair him. And you can't make him into the man that you need or hope to have in your life. What you need to do is say to yourself, those feelings I had, that I felt for him, that's a good and positive sign for the future. That means I can have those feelings potentially for someone else. It means I'm capable of having those feelings. It means I can meet someone who returns those feelings of affection, where the feelings are reciprocated. And hopefully I can meet somebody in the future who's healthy enough to reciprocate those feelings for longer than 4 weeks before they go off the rails and disappear on me. So when you say we were so close, that's not true. You weren't. You had a brief and intense affair with someone that you barely knew. You were not close. Doesn't mean you didn't have feelings, but those feelings were again about an imagined future. And you invested that in him, that fantasy of a future, perhaps together with him. And you invested in him, pushed all your chips into the middle of the table. but you lost the bet. Not because there's anything wrong with you, but because there's something not right with him. He's not in good working order. He's not capable of being in a relationship. You don't even have a way of contacting him. So there's literally nothing you can do except move forward. Not with him, not trying to rescue him, not trying to fix him, but move forward and hope that you will meet another guy and meet someone who is capable of feeling as strongly about you as you now know you are capable of feeling about someone else. You have made this kind of connection. It was brief. You can make a more lasting connection in the future with someone else. Thanks to Roman for supporting the Savage Lovecast. Roman is a men's health company that offers remote online diagnosis for ED and convenient monthly delivery of medication. Guys are terrible at taking care of their health, whether it's a knee injury, bad back, or something worse. Guys are usually more comfortable ignoring it than they are seeing a doctor. I am certainly guilty of that myself. And pretty much the same goes, or it's even worse, when guys have to talk to their doctors about erectile dysfunction. Study shows 70% of guys who experience ED don't get treated for it. Here at the Lovecast, we take ED very seriously. There is no reason to ignore it. And thankfully, Roman has created an easy way to chat with a doctor online if that's how you need to do it. With Roman, you can get medical care for ED, if appropriate, from the comfort and privacy of your own home. You can handle everything online in a convenient and discreet manner. Getting started is simple. Go to getroman.com/savage and complete an online visit. If your doctor decides that treatment would be appropriate, they can prescribe genuine medication that can be delivered in discreet packaging right to your door with free 2-day shipping. Guys, go talk to the doctor. Erectile dysfunction can be tough to tackle, but it's really important to get checked out. And with Roman, it's easy to connect with a doctor. Just go to getroman.com/savage to get a free online visit and free 2-day shipping. That's getroman.com/savage for a free visit to get started. getroman.com/savage.
Hi, Dan. I'm a queer woman in the Boston area, and I can't believe I'm calling about this issue, but I am. I recently got a call from my twin brother's girlfriend that my twin brother has been really involved on some white supremacist sites, even emailing the founders of some sites every day, even talking about moving to Florida to be with them. It's gotten to a point where they are on the verge of breaking up, and he's most likely going to have to move back home to my parents. So I've been talking with my parents, even though they're rather conservative. They do agree that this is very wrong, and we're very worried about him, and especially the kind of violence that he might inflict on other people. So we have come up with somewhat of a plan for my parents to be somewhat loving and supportive of him, not supportive of his beliefs, because we're so afraid that if we push him away and he doesn't have anywhere to go, that he's just going to move to Florida and get even more extreme and be incited to do violent things. And I'm going to be more of the person asking hard questions of him, since he's not reliant on me for a place to live, and I'm the obvious liberal in the family. I've been looking online, and I haven't found much in terms of resources or supports to help guide my family on how to address this. I'm almost wondering if it can be potentially a mental health issue that we could have him go into treatment for, even if it's against his consent, because I'm sure it will be against his consent. I am a therapist myself, and it doesn't seem that it's at a point where we can do anything like that against his consent. So it's at a point where we're all very worried about it. We are expecting to have him over for a family get-together this weekend, which will be really my first time confronting my brother since talking to his girlfriend about this. So we're all quite nervous about it. And we would really love to hear from you or any resources you can recommend to help me and my family address this with him.
Joining me by phone to help tackle this question, Christian Picciolini, founder of the Free Radicals Project and author of White American Youth and the forthcoming Breaking Hate, Confronting the New Culture of Extremism. Hey, Christian, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Now, just to give some background here before we get to the question, you at a very early age got involved or sucked into or recruited by the white supremacist white power movement, and you got organizationally involved.
Yeah, I was 14 years old in 1987 when I was recruited into America's first neo-Nazi skinhead group. I spent 8 years as a part of that movement until in 1996, when I was just 23 years old, I found my way out. But it wasn't really until my world kind of crashed around me and really injected it with a lot of confusion and uncertainty that I was able to break away.
What do you think made you susceptible as a teenager to the white power movement's call, to the propaganda?
You know, Dan, I came from kind of a normal family. There wasn't any hate as part of my upbringing. It wasn't a racist environment. In fact, my parents are Italian immigrants who came to the U.S. in the mid-'60s. And when they came, they were often the victims of prejudice. So it really wasn't part of my family DNA. But because my parents were immigrants, they had to work hard. They were gone 7 days a week, sometimes 14 hours a day, trying to run a small business. And I didn't see my parents very often. And even though I was surrounded by a lot of love and, family members, I really kind of wondered what I had done to push my parents away. So I felt very abandoned by them. Mm-hmm. And, I went in search for an identity, a community, pillars of what make us who we are and what foster almost every decision we make. And at 14 years old, I was standing in an alley. I was smoking a joint, and this guy came up to me and he pulled the joint from my mouth. And he said that that's what the communists and the Jews wanted me to do to keep me docile. And, at 14, I didn't know what a communist was. I didn't know what a Jew was. And I didn't even know what the word docile meant. But it was the first time yeah, it's true. It was the first time in my life that anybody had paid any attention to me. I was idealistic. I was driven, but I was isolated. And, I bit. It did fill that void of identity, community, and purpose that, I wasn't sure that I had found anywhere else. They sucked me in, just like you said, because it empowered me in ways that kept me blind to the damage I was causing.
And now, instead of looking for directionless young men in alleys smoking joints, white supremacists, bigots, can find these young directionless men in their own homes, in their parents' bedrooms, through their devices, through their computers. We've really created this, the internet has created this access for these kinds of bigots and people out there recruiting for the white power movement to find disaffected young men more easily. The internet's brought a lot of good things into our lives, but it's also brought a lot of bad people, in a sense, into our homes.
What you're describing are what I call potholes, those things that kind of appear in our life's journey that detour us, frankly. And potholes can be anything like trauma, can be, struggling with mental health, it can be grief or loss of a parent, it can be, divorce, it can be joblessness or poverty or even privilege, which can keep us isolated in a small bubble. And those things, when they appear, in our journey and we can't really fill them in or can't find a way to avoid those obstacles, they detour us to the fringes where there's somebody waiting with, some sort of a narrative that will fill those voids for us. And usually they work to point the blame at somebody else, to project your pain.
Okay, let's talk about the caller and her issue. I'm sure this is coming up for lots of people all across the country where they have a relative, they have a child, they have a sibling, they have an uncle, or they have a friend who has been sucked into this movement, who is moving toward white supremacism, extremism, and may even, as in the case with this caller and her twin brother, seems capable of violence. What do people do? How do you intervene? How do you reach that person in your life with a message that may pull them back?
When I listened to the call, it struck me as, very familiar because it's similar to most of the emails that I get on a daily basis from people who are horrified at, of a family member, of a loved one, of a boyfriend or girlfriend And it, really what's important to understand in these situations is that people are not born to hate. They, latch on to those narratives to fill those voids. So I would want to know deeper what the motivation might be years before, because pre-radicalization to these ideologies, starts the day we're born. It begins when we hit that first pothole. And then once we find the ideology, it gives us permission then to be angry, to lash out. So I would want to know more about what the person's journey looked like. Interestingly enough, being a twin is something I see pretty often as well, because there is a twin separation anxiety that can develop, or a sense of identity that is difficult to establish. But it could be situational, like job loss or, environmental exposure to propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
You were right when you were talking about marginalized people being online. There's a critical mass of people who might not be establishing those connections in real life, but when they're online, they can be whichever persona they want.
Mm-hmm. And in a way, we talk about political, right-wing nationalist political leaders like, fucking president of the United States, scapegoating, right. Looking for scapegoats, looking for people to blame for the problems that you're having in your life, or that people are having. But what you're saying is that a person can hit a pothole and then look around themselves for that explanation, for that scapegoat. And a lot of people who've hit potholes, particularly young white men right now looking around at that scapegoat, are arriving at these white nationalist YouTube accounts, white nationalist websites. They're interacting with white nationalists on 8chan and other websites, and being given an answer for why they're unemployed or why they're disaffected, and basically filling in that pothole with lies.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's not difficult to step in into those types of propaganda algorithms that just will then feed you with more of that type of propaganda. The internet loves to curate and predict what it is that we want to see or want to enjoy. Start out by kind of treading into these territories of nationalism and far right extremism, and you land on propaganda. Well, it's no surprise that our feeds then will continue to curate that type of content for us, sending us deeper down a rabbit hole.
So what do family do? The girlfriend reached out to the twin sister. She's thinking about breaking up with him, and in her shoes, I would absolutely probably have broken up with him already, not shaming her. Breaking up is easier to say you should do than to actually do. But the parents, the sister, it sounds like they're going to have an intervention. She's going to speak to him about it.
Right.
But is it better for him to hit rock bottom, to lose his girlfriend, to lose the love and support of his family? Or does the family stay engaged and try to love and support him through this? Or is there just not one right model?
It really kind of depends on the temperament of the person, and I would say that pushing the person further away is probably not the right answer, because some people, obviously, when they hit rock bottom, will lash out against others, and we've seen kind of the end result of that with some of these shootings. I think that they do need to speak with them. I think that they need to be honest and vulnerable, and also communicate, not in an ideological fashion. It shouldn't be a debate, because you can't argue with an illogical ideology. You can't win. But I would really try to listen for what the motivation was for him to go in that direction, and then really try and repair those potholes, try and fill them in with, if it's job training because of job loss, or mental health counseling because of conditions. And I have to say, certainly mental health disorders don't cause racism or violence. But often people are isolated and lonely and bullied and marginalized, and that can push people towards the fringes. Mm-hmm. So I would say, please consult with a professional on that, and also, potential therapists for, that can deal with family situations. Without knowing, exactly what the potholes are, I would say that it's not an ideological thing that led him there. That was just the ultimate permission for him.
It was an emotional response.
If there's disability, sometimes people feel like there are no other options if they've hit a wall. Mm-hmm. So I would examine the potholes and really try and fill those in to build his resiliency.
And again, the girlfriend can go and probably should go, but the family should stay engaged. Allow him to live at mom and dad's. Don't cut him loose and let him wind up in Florida. But the risks here are grave. A lot of white supremacist individuals who've engaged in acts of mass violence have first murdered their families, have first murdered their own parents or siblings. So
that's right.
We don't want to understate the gravity of this situation.
Right. And I would also, assess the risk involved. I mean, if she mentioned that, they were worried he may be violent, but are there weapons in the household? Has he made threats before? Can he carry those threats out? But yeah, security and safety, the first issue. If they feel, that it could turn violent, certainly they shouldn't engage. And certainly if there, is any sort of risk of violence because of weapons, they have a duty to report that. There's something called the Baker Act. If there is a mental health condition and they worry about, how that might transpire with weapons or anything like that, or a state of mind, there is something that they can do against his will. But I think that should be a last resort. Really examine the risk and the motivations of what happened, and consult with somebody who's a professional. But it sounded like she was a counselor, so she really kind of understands how to approach these things. But because it's a family, it might be more difficult. So it's easier to bring in somebody who's an outsider to do that.
So where do you find those resources? What resources would you direct the caller and her family to as they confront this problem?
Well, unfortunately, Dan, there's kind of a lack of resources in this arena. One, because the administration that's, in the White House now really hasn't focused on it. In fact, they've pulled funding for resources. My organization, the Free Radicals Project, would be willing to help. We don't charge for our services. We're a nonprofit organization. And I'm also really concerned about the Florida angle, because if he's talking to folks, who are web masters of the sites that are coming from Florida, I'd be concerned about that, because there are some pretty dangerous organizations. Groups like Adam Waffen Division are based in Florida. They've been responsible for the murder of at least 6 people. And there are also a lot of propagandists coming out of Florida that, I consider dangerous as well. So, yeah, if the caller would like to talk more about it, I'd be happy to speak to her and work with her on it.
Christian Picciolini, founder of Free Radicals Project, author of Breaking Hate, Confronting the New Culture of Extremism, coming out February 11th, 2020 from Hatchet. Thank you so much for jumping on the phone today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. It was a pleasure.
Hi, Dan. It's a 22-year-old here from the South, bisexual. So I recently started messaging this girl on the lesbian dating site, and we were texting, and I told her I don't really have that great of experience with men. And she was telling me that she does have good experience with men, and she currently has a boyfriend. And I was like, oh, are you guys looking for a threesome? Like, I'm not really into that. And she's like, no, actually, like, he doesn't have to be involved sexually or even socially if you don't want. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, so are you guys in an open relationship? And she was like, well, yes, we are. And actually, like, me and him don't even have sex right now because he's really sick. And then she began to explain to me that, like, he has leukemia and he's bedridden in the hospital. And so he doesn't want her to put her life on hold for him. And this morning, we went on a coffee date, and she was really nice and really cute, and I really liked her. And she told me that he's okay with her going on dates with people and hooking up with people. And I asked if, like, he'd be okay with her doing that with a guy, and she said that she wasn't interested in doing things with any other guys. But when I told this to my friends, a lot of my queer friends said that they think that he's only okay with her hooking up with girls because he probably doesn't value the relationship between 2 women. And I would just want your opinion on that. Also, I wanted your opinion on the entire situation itself. Like, should I feel guilty for hooking up with someone that has a boyfriend that is in the hospital and has leukemia? I don't know. I've never been in a situation like this. I really like her. I want to pursue this. Like, I want to hook up with her. But at the same time, I don't know if I should feel guilty. And I also don't know if he is only okay with this because he doesn't value, like, lesbian relationships.
My first thought, and it's not a happy one, is wonder if the boyfriend with leukemia actually exists. Maybe I'm cynical, but I've read too many stories about people on the internet who claimed to have cancer, claimed to be partnered with someone who had cancer in an effort to engender sympathy and to manipulate other people. Now, you met this woman in public, you had a coffee date, and she seemed like a lovely person. Sometimes people who are manipulative shits who lie about stuff you can't imagine anyone but a sociopath lying about to anyone or online or anywhere else are lovely and charming people in person, and it's a part of their grift. Not saying that's the case here. There are people with leukemia who are bedridden, who have partners. They also exist. I'm just saying, trust but verify. I'm just saying, go in with your bullshit detectors on in any new relationship, because sometimes people lie to get what they want. All right, let's just accept the premise, though. Let's say that she has a boyfriend. He has leukemia. He is desperately ill, bedridden, and she is his caretaker. And she is seeking other partners, outside sexual partners. Is that a thing that people sometimes do with their partner's blessings? Abso-fucking-lutely. And you do not have to feel guilty about it. Indeed, if some intimacy, sex, connection, joy, if she can fit that in with someone else around the margins, that could make her a better caregiver for her ailing boyfriend than she otherwise might be. Caregiving, being the caregiver for someone who is terminally ill, is very, very stressful. And people under a lot of stress need some release. They need to get out from under that stress every once in a while. I knew a lot of guys in the 80s and 90s whose boyfriends, all of them boyfriends at the time, never husbands because that was not yet possible for us, whose boyfriends were ill and dying, and who, usually with the ill and dying boyfriend's blessing, had sex occasionally with other people. And the other people that they had sex with were doing God's fucking work. They were providing those guys who were taking care of their partners, whose relationships with their intimate and sometimes formerly sexual partners had shifted from romance and sex and intimacy and connection to caregiver, which is another kind of intimacy and connection, but not a sexual or romantic one. And a little bit of sex outside the relationship with their ailing boyfriend's blessings was itself a blessing. And you could be the blessing this girl needs. As for your queer friends, fuck them. Are they omniscient? How did they read the guy with leukemia's mind? I'd like to know exactly how they perform that function. She told you that she is only interested in having sex with other women at this time. I would look at your friends and say, what happened to believe women? What happened to believe queer women? What happened to respecting a woman's sexual agency? Why do you assume this woman is being ordered around by her boyfriend in order to stay off dick by her boyfriend, or that he doesn't somehow respect lesbian relationships or same-sex relationships between women if he is fine with her having sex with other women in a relationship, a romantic connection with another woman? How is that ipso facto on its face disrespectful? Yeah, get better queer friends. Get more emotionally intelligent queer friends. Get yourself some queer friends who aren't projecting their hang-ups or their insecurities about the legitimacy of same-sex relationships onto the male partners of bisexual women who are seeking same-sex relationships. What your queer friend said was pretty fucked up. But again, circling back to my cynical advice at the top, verify somehow. Draw her out about her relationship, draw her out about her boyfriend, because there are a lot of people online who lie, and sadly, there are people online who lie about just this sort of thing to manipulate others into eating their pussy or sucking their dicks. All right, before we get to your response calls, let's read some tweets. Said Dog tweets, hey, at Fake Dan Savage, tell the father of the 16-year-old bi kid to get his son vaccinated against HPV. It's among the safest and most effective interventions we have. Completely agree. CDC recommends the HPV vaccine for all kids, boys and girls starting at age 11. If you weren't adequately vaccinated, the CDC recommends going and getting the HPV vaccine up until age 26. Gay men 26 and older should also get the HPV vaccine. You know what? Everyone should just go get the HPV vaccine regardless of age. That's not the CDC's recommendation. That is my recommendation. CX Beaver tweets, "Hey Dan, the bi woman with the cheating / no Instagram photos of her boyfriend said he hadn't gone down on her once in the 7 months of their relationship. That alone is a DTMFA offense." Completely agree. Should have flagged that myself. And finally, Skeptical Who tweets, "I was almost done listening to all the back episodes of the Savage Lovecast when they disappeared from Apple Podcasts. What gives? I feel I will never be truly complete without them." Oh, I'm so sorry you feel incomplete. Here's how you can feel complete again. With a micro subscription to the Savage Lovecast, you get access to a full year's worth of micro Savage Lovecast, including today's. With a Magnum subscription, you can subscribe to the Savage Lovecast at www.savagelovecast.com. You get access to every single Savage Lovecast ever produced, going back to the very first episode 13 years ago. That's 13 years worth of Savage Love. And of course, the Magnum shows now are longer. They have no ads and more guests. You can subscribe for a month, 6 months, or a year, again, at savagelovecast.com. And while you're a subscriber, you can download as many episodes as you want while you have your subscription. So, Skeptical Who, you do not have to feel incomplete any longer. You just have to go to savagelovecast.com and subscribe, and you will be complete again. All right, here are your response calls.
This is to the caller in episode 668 that was worried about their relationship kind of reaching a dull point and moving on like she's done in the past. Dan, I think you did a great job addressing that. Yeah, it could be boredom. It definitely could be that as an issue. And I think like sexual adventures and all those types of things are a really great idea. However, I think that there should have been some encouragement for some non-sexual adventures. For instance, going on a trip, trying some new restaurants. There's all kinds of things that you can do to help spice up your relationship that are non-sexual that can lead to sexual things.
Hi, I'm calling regarding the sleep sex guy. Have you ever considered motion sensor recording the episodes, and then you could play it together in the morning and you could rehash it together and experience the fun?
Hi, Dan. I'm calling about the man who talked about how his husband initiates sex in the middle of the night and doesn't remember it. I just wanted to let that man know that it is normal, that he and his partner are not alone. My partner does this all the time. He never remembers it. We just have a good time and laugh about it. I certainly really enjoy the lack of inhibitions. You guys are not alone. Just enjoy. It's really fun.
All right, we're going to leave it there. 206-302-2064 is the number here at the Savage Lovecast. If you'd like to record a question or a comment for a future show, give us a buzz, 206-302-2064. Tickets are on sale now for the premiere of the 15th annual Hump. The Hump Film Festival will open in November in Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, and this year, Vancouver, BC at the same time. See the new films and get to vote for your favorites and give the Hump Awards. It's a whole new lineup of great indie, amateur, dirty, and very creative porn films. Go to humpfilmfest.com right now to get tickets for the premiere of the 15th annual Hump in Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, and for the first time ever, Vancouver, BC. And of course, the 15th annual Hump will then go off on tour all across North America after the opening festivals in those cities. Follow me on Twitter at FakeDanSavage. Follow Zachary Zane on Twitter at Zachary Zane. And follow Christian Picciolini at CPICCIOLINI. That's C. Picciolini. Savage Lovecast is produced every week by Nancy Hartunian and me and the tech-savvy at-risk youth. And Nancy will all be back at you next week with an installment of Savage Lovecast. Thanks for downloading.